You've played Dota 2 for thousands of hours, but you've always wanted something more. A reason to fight, a deeper meaning to your battles. But to know the hidden history of Dota 2, you must go on an adventure of a lifetime. An adventure into the lore!
The Dota 2 map. So iconic, it is literally the icon of the game. She's had many changes through the ages, and you can even see some of these, like tower movements on the map, but all in all, it stayed relatively the same. So let's take a journey down the lanes, past the River Fag, and explore some of the lore hidden on the map itself. Oh, looky here, a creep camp. Creep camps are places creatures in the Dota 2 world call home, be it a den of wild animals, a campsite for roaming armies, or even a home for a father and son. The Hellbear camp, however, is something else entirely. It's a hiding place. The story begins with a very simple description on every jungler's favorite item, the Iron Talon. It reads, a simple but effective weapon devised to quell a great Hellbear uprising. Okay, so it's made to kill Hellbears, but what's with the word uprising? An uprising is an act of resistance or rebellion. So there was a Hellbear uprising, which means that they were owned, potentially even slaves. You can see a symbol on their back, perhaps a brand placed there by a master, a sign of ownership. Finding the masters isn't that hard of a task either. All you have to know is a little bit of lore and look at the weapon itself. The Iron Talon is a bladed gauntlet that is found in many real-world cultures, from the Tekogagi of the ninja clans to the Badnaka of India. But in Dota, it's the weapon of choice of Lycan. Lycan hails from the Kingdom of Sloam, a kingdom once ruled by the last king of Sloam, who was obsessed with the capture and use of beasts, filling his menageries and royal courts with animals of all types and sizes from around the world. In one of these endless stocks, Beastmaster worked as a boy, tending to all the beasts the last king had enslaved. For the King of Sloan was known for two things: his love of enslaving and displaying animals, and his boundless cruelty. This cruelty shaped the fate of both Beastmaster and Lycan, but today we're going to focus on Lycan, who has probably the best lore in the game, in my opinion. Lycan was a noble prince of the House of Ambry, the greatest family in Sloan. His house and father set out to defy the King of Beasts after the court became stronger and stranger, being filled with sorcerers and creatures alike. But his rebellion failed miserably, and the king set out to publicly exterminate every member of the Ambry bloodline. Eventually, all that was left was Lycan and his father, who were captured and dragged to the royal court for all to see. The King of Sloan chained Lycan's father to the floor and used his sorcerers to transform the Prince of Ambry into a wolf, so the king could watch the father of Ambry get eaten alive by his son. But Lycan kept his hatred of the king, and instead of mauling his father, he tore out the throats of his captors and ran off into the night. His father laughed about the entire thing, even when the king shoved his sword through his gut. I mean, if that ain't the sickest lore out there, I don't know what is. Anyway, we have learned that there was once a kingdom of Sloam whose king had an obsession with enslaving animals and magic, and there was once a Prince of Sloam. Now it's time for the headcanon alert, because we're going in deep. Lycan is of the most powerful house of Ambry, so it's reasonable that he would be taught as a child of nobility to fight with the weapons preferred by that kingdom. It would then reason that Lycan's clawed weapons were the weapons commonly preferred in Sloam, and thus the Iron Talon was a weapon built for the Knights of Sloam. Which makes sense, because they were designed specifically to deal with animals, and we know the king was obsessed with capturing and maintaining said animals. But what about the Hellbears? Well, we can reason that the Hellbears were captured by the last king and enslaved, and I personally believe that they might have been used in the King of Sloam's armies. I mean, these creatures are vicious, and they would make excellent frontline units in any army. Their swiftness aura leading the charge of the foot soldiers, their thunderous claps smashing through the front lines of the enemy. I believe that the last King of Sloam led an army of men and beasts around his kingdom, and the effective frontline soldiers needed constant replacement. But where does one find a Hellbear Smasher? I believe that they are not found, but made. Remember how the King of Sloam was obsessed with both animals and transformation magic? I believe that the Hellbears are not natural animals, but rather animals twisted and shaped to be enslaved, and that these animals are Ursine cubs. Ursa's lore is that he left his home, the Ursine's greatest warrior, in search of a looming threat and spreading evil. Now, we assume that that's the ancients, but what if that evil to Ursa's people was something else? Ursa constantly talks about his cubs, defending them, and even in death begs you to spare his cubs. Perhaps it is the cubs who are in trouble the most, and perhaps that's why Ursa is on his mission, to find the source of the people who roam his woods, slaying Ursa females and capturing their cubs. The cubs who, through magic and training, become transformed into the Hellbears. If you compare the models, the Hellbears are built the same as Ursa, and their clap is quite similar to Ursa's Earthshock. True, they do have differences, mutated into clawed hands and feet, cut off noses to ensure that they can't find their way home, and of course their hairless color, but these changes can be made from physical and magical manipulations. The body type, the features, the fact that they're giant bears, it all screams Ursa. The last King of Sloam patrolled the forest, capturing all sorts of animals, but he would treasure the Ursine cubs above all other for his army, capturing them, transforming them into enslaved warriors, branding them when ready for battle, and sending them to die in his name. The Ursine are a proud and vicious race, however, so it would be expected that even through his horrific enslavement, they would occasionally rise up against their masters. One such incident must have been the Great Hellbear Uprising, in which the Iron Talon was created to quell back the Ursine slaves and get them weak enough to be controlled again. No, not directly killing them, but hurting them just enough instantly to be controllable. So how do we find these poor mutated Ursa cubs on the map? Well, Beastmaster led a rebellion of his own against the King of Sloam, rallying the enslaved beasts to destroy his royal court. And in the chaos of rebellion, the king was mauled to death, the enslaved animals escaping into the world. Perhaps it was the Hellbears who led that charge, and perhaps it was them that mauled the king in the end. But what we see here at the Hellbear camp are now the freed Hellbears of the royal army, escaped slaves looking for a safe place to hide from a world they have not seen since they were just cubs. Some may even be trying to find their way home to their mothers. You know, until you kill them for a tiny bit of gold. You monster. Of course, this entire headcanon theory stems from literally just the word uprising in the description of the Iron Talons, so take this one with a little bit of salt, because this one might be a stretch. Let's journey now to one of the most recognizable places on the Dota 2 map, a place where many lose their lives and where many get what they need to achieve their goals, the deadly Tarn of Roshan. Roshan's home is a pretty interesting place. It's moved several times in the different stages of Dota, but apparently that's canon, as characters seem to recognize that it moves and changes once in a while. The home of Roshan may change, but the rules of Roshan seldom do. A towering beast that can be killed with great effort, and from his corpse, heroes can take the Aegis of Immortality, granting them the ability to return from the dead, and sometimes cheese. The cheese is made from a fur blog. Fur blogs are never mentioned anywhere else in the Dota 2 lore, but apparently in World of Warcraft, they were creatures like Ursa. So this is Ursa milk cheese? But I refuse to accept any of that bullshit. Warcraft lore is not, I repeat, not associated with Dota 2 lore. Stop sending me requests to do videos on how Animage is Terrorblade's brother. He's not, they're not, it's not related, please. Anyway, Roshan. We've all fought Roshan and killed Roshan, and we know the rules of the beast, but just who or what is he? Well, I've got some ideas. We know that Roshan did something no one else has ever succeeded in doing. He stole from a shopkeeper. Now, shopkeepers in Dota are not like your normal shopkeepers in our universe. No. These guys are something else entirely. For one, they are called keepers, and apparently, they are tasked with the sacred duties of selling things from the gods themselves. The keepers are protected and serve the gods of Dota 2, and it appears that the gods have a bit of a truce and that they all get together to punish any who dare harm or steal from a keeper. This weirdly makes sense when you think about it. All right. So you live in a world where mega powerful artifacts exist that can make people come back to life, that can make you turn completely invisible, that can make you teleport, and this is like public knowledge. I mean, these things are not a secret. So you would assume that people would constantly be at war to get these objects, and there would be endless strife and turmoil of tribes killing tribes in order to acquire them. But what if the leaders of these people agreed to just give up all these artifacts and let a third party keep them and sell them to anyone that has earned enough for them? No more constant wars, no more assassinations of kings and families. You follow the Stonehold Decree that whoever strikes the killing blow to an enemy gets gold from their master, and when one gets enough gold, they can purchase one of these powerful and magical things. Of course, the Stonehall Decree also states that it's fair game to duel someone who you have a problem with and get even more gold, so people don't tend to live long with these artifacts after they acquire them. This basically explains how the system works and why Legion, who hails from Stonehall, is always running around dueling poor defenseless supports. If you get gold for killing as a way to prove that you've killed something, the gold can be spent on powerful relics bought by a third party. You go about your mission, and when you are slain or you die of old age or whatever, the relic is returned to the third party, and no one ever gets too much power for too long. Seems like a decent way for competing gods to keep their followers not constantly at each other's necks, but Roshan did something that no one has ever done before. He stole from a keeper. Successfully. I mean, many try to steal from the keepers, but they all have terrible fates and no one has ever succeeded. People know to attempt to, at best, is a death sentence, at worst, is eternal punishment from literally every single god in existence. But Roshan went ahead and stole the Aegis of Immortality from its keeper. To even steal from these sacred every single god protects me guys is a nightmare, but Rosh just went up and decided to murder one and take the Aegis. Naturally, Rosh received the worst punishment the gods could possibly muster. He would become one with the item he stole, combining it into his body itself and giving him its power. He would be trapped in a location of the gods' choosing, enchanted to never be able to leave, and every single person in the world would want to kill him. And kill him they would, brutally and with friends, and on his corpse the heroes could rip out the Aegis and use it themselves. After it's used, Roshan would come back to life, ready to be murdered again and again for eternity, feeling nothing but fear and pain. But what was Roshan? Well, headcanon alert, but I think that he might be a Smeevil. Smeevils are little creatures that devote themselves to servitude, often being the assistants of blacksmiths, heroes, and even keepers. They're mischievous for sure, but they typically just like to serve and survive by being protected by a more powerful master. As Fezelfez says, they seldom have a floor to call their own. In rare cases, however, Smeevils can be more than just helpers. Some will tame animals to help them in their duties, and some more intelligent Smeevils can even become tradesmen themselves. Legend tells that in the Hoven, where Clinks hails from, there lived blind Smeevils that worked as blacksmiths, forging some of his armor. In fact, I think Clinks himself might be a Smeevil before his horrific curse, but that topic is highly up for debate. In any case, Smeevils are known to be helpers of keepers and blacksmiths, and also known to appear subservient but also look out for themselves. It's not that hard to reason then that the only creature that could have got close enough to a keeper to gain his trust and kill him would be a Smeevil servant. Not only does Rosh fit the bill of being a Smeevil character-wise, but also he's pretty much a perfect matchup physically. Smeevils are, your controllers? Smeevil's legs are made for jumping, and so are Roshan's. Also, the main thing hindering my Clinks as a Smeevil theory, damn you, you backwards legs, Rosh also has the same spinal shape, horns, face, arms, and pretty much everything else as a Smeevil, which more or less seals the deal. All things considered, Roshan is, in my mind, a Smeevil. But the question is, was he always like this? Remember, the gods wanted to punish him, so why would they turn him into this giant, powerful beast? Well, I don't think they did. I believe that the gods infused Roshan with the Aegis in his Smeevil form, enchanting him into being trapped into a cave, and left him a tiny defenseless little Smeevil to die effortlessly to heroes who wanted his power. But one being did have mercy for the little guy. One being who understood what it's like to lust for power and to use their strength to take it. The Dire. Physically, Roshan has many dire traits. Black rock-like, craggy, and jagged exterior. He lives in a dire pit which can be filled with lava and surrounded by dire stones. But most importantly is the evidence presented in everyone's favorite event, Dire Tide. Dire Tide comes once a year, or in our case, once and then kinda 1 year later and then never ever again. It's a time when the Radiant's power fades and Dire has almost full control of the battlefield. This has very specific effects on Roshan. Check out this dank lore poem. 'Tis the season of the Dire tide rising ever higher. Greevil's hatching from Roshan, the Radiant's power is almost gone. Blah blah blah, Roshan wants candy. The Roshaning occurs during Dire Tide, and the enchantment that keeps Roshan trapped is dispelled when Dire is at its peak power, allowing him to leave his den. During this exodus, he is in search of one thing: candy. Yes, candy, I know it sounds dumb, but hang with me. This candy is Greevil Taffy, and it's made by stretching and folding these little assholes called Greevils 10,000 times on a horrible torture rack. Greevils are the cousins of Smeevils, but they are physically a little different. Look at those forward-facing legs. That means Smeevils and Greevils can have something in between, and that means that Clinks could be a Smeevil. I told you, I was right. But instead of being dedicated servants, they are just kind of asshole trolls who run around causing mayhem. They do, however, hold one special ability. They are able to mutate by being exposed to dire, radiant, or rue ore. This mutagen effect is neat, but may explain why Roshan hunts the candy, because if he consumes it, it can change him too. Headcanon time! The Dire breaks the enchantment and allows Roshan to leave his home, and he searches for the corpses of his cousin, the Greevils, who can change their bodies depending on what they are exposed to as eggs. By ingesting the essence of the Greevil, Roshan may be able to use this ability to grow more powerful and infuse himself with Dire's power. After all, if he gets enough candy, he goes berserk and sugar rushes, becoming near unkillable. So this explains what happens in the end to Roshan. Imagine you're a tiny little critter forced to live forever and everyone wants to kill you. Well, what do? Well, you'd work out. Try to make it harder for these things to kill you so that you can finally live in peace. And that's just what the Dire offers to Roshan. Eating his cousins the Greevils to gain the ability to be more affected by Dire's influence, which can change him physically, making him no longer a little Smeevil, but a gigantic Dire-infused beast. And on the plus side, he gets little wings. Now killing him is a task few can accomplish. Roshan gets to live peacefully and defend himself against nearly every foe, and Dire gains an advantage in the Battle of the Ancients. After all, those affected with Dire grow in strength, while Radiant only grows their intelligence. The only way to take down Roshan in this form is with a massive amount of physical strength, and followers of the Radiant would pretty much find it impossible to take down Roshan with their magic and intelligence only, meaning only Dire heroes should be able to claim the Aegis of Immortality. You see, Dire ain't so bad, as long as it's serving its own goals. Okay, now you want me to explain the baby Roshans and how Greevils spawn from Roshan? Well, I can't. I don't know. Baby Roshan? I mean, who knows? So that is the complete story of Roshan, and one of the most memorable places on the map of Dota 2. God, that is annoying. Why doesn't the Dota 2 map have a name? I mean, it would be so much easier to call it something else, and it would sound so much cooler, right? Well, what if I told you that it does have a name? A name revealed to us by the lore of a hero you know quite well. Pudge. Pudge is a butcher, but a butcher of men. He hails from a land where war's endless, but flesh never decays. He and he alone has the task of cutting up the bodies of the fallen who would never rot and making them small enough for the flocks of carrion-eating birds and animals to feast upon them. That was, until he decided to skip a step and just eat the bodies himself. A disgusting story from hellish lands called the Fields of Endless Carnage. You should know these fields, after all, because you've been there many times. Death is a weird thing in the world of Dota 2. People come back from the dead all the time. Some because the power they have naturally, but mostly because a powerful force demands them to. The Ancients hold unfathomable power, enough to change the landscape, enough to brainwash heroes, but also enough to change the laws of nature themselves and bring the dead back to life. And this is a pretty known and common occurrence. After all, every hero in the game has respawn lines, and they acknowledge that they and their enemies can return from death so long as the ancient they are enthralled to still stands. It takes time, sure, for the bodies of the fallen to be collected and brought back to the well of power the ancients crafted to repair them. The more severe their deaths and the stronger the man who dies, the longer it takes. But eventually every dead hero will respawn as they were before their untimely demise. Some may even prove their worth to the ancients, showing them how many people they have slain, represented by gold, as we learned in the Stonehall Proclamation, and convince the ancient to devote its full power to instantly resurrect them, if they have the gold to justify it. So death and resurrection are commonplace on the battlefield of the ancients. A battlefield where war and strife have been going on for years, where warrior, creep, and everything in between fight endlessly and never die, letting their cosmic masters resurrect them. Yes, friends, you have been to the fields of endless carnage, where warriors never die and where nothing decays, because the ancients won't let them, because they need them to fight in their name to destroy each other. Even poor creatures just passing through in the jungle are affected by this power, respawning in their camps where they cower, waiting for the fighting heroes to stop. Do you need more evidence? Check out the Monkey King comic, where the Monkey King and Breck are forced to fight against heroes shipped in from the Fields of Endless Carnage. And look who's there. A dire creep. Sure, okay, but what about Pudge? Shouldn't he always be in the fields? I mean, his lore never said that he left. Well, he is. After all, he is the most picked hero in Dota 2 since its creation, with a staggering 453 million games, 100 million more than second place. It's true. Pudge never did leave these fields of endless carnage, and there's a pretty good chance you're gonna see him in your next game. And that will do it for our journey through the Dota 2 map for today. It does hold many more secrets, but for now, we must go. Thanks for watching LoreGasm, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. This was a pretty headcanon-heavy episode, so I can't wait for you guys to try to prove me wrong in the comments, so I have something to do in my pathetic life. Clicks is a type of Smeevil. Anyhow, thank you for watching, and remember, together, we lore!